Hey everybody, this is the tutorial on how to change the battery in a Bunker Mini. The total time for doing this is less than 20 minutes. There's only a handful of bolts to take off. It's fairly easy. The tools you're gonna need is a 3mm hex and a 2.5mm hex. And we recommend, if you've got it, get a very long 3mm so that you can get all the way down to the bolts on the bracket for the batteries. And as always, it's good to have a few containers on hand to put your bolts into. Step one is to remove all the bolts on the top so we can pull the chassis off. We start by removing the rails. Second part is to take off the side screws. And next we're going to take off the 4 screws on the top that hold the shell on. Now you should be able to lift the shell off. So this way. Next, we remove all of the bolts that hold the top plate down. Once it's open, we're going to remove the battery bracket, and that has 2 bolts on both sides. Next, we're going to put the battery in. There are some 3M double-sided foam tape in the bottom, but we're not going to use that because the battery's going to need to be placed and moved around before the bracket is on, so we don't want to tape the battery down. Those actually just serve more as foam pads. We're going to place the bracket on and line it up with our bolts and bolt the bracket back down. Once your battery is in, we need to connect the battery to the controller. There are 2 cables. It doesn't matter which one goes to which port. These are the 2 connectors we're going to attach the battery to. They're labeled with battery right on them. As always, when you put a new battery in, always test it before you go ahead and seal the whole chassis up. So to test it, we're going to power it on. And you can see that the LCD turns on. You'll see the light turn on in the front of the robot. Make sure your e-stop is toggled off as well. And we see it's running. We'll also check the controller. And we can see everything's working fine. So now we can go ahead and put the top and the shell back on. To put it back together, we're just going to do everything in reverse of the way we took it off. So first we're going to put our seal back on. Once the seal is back on, we can go ahead and put the plate on. You want to be careful when doing this. If you set the plate down and do any adjustments, you'll pull the seal out, and you don't want that. So we're going to put it on top and line up our holes on one side. And then gently set it down. And the seal will remain in place. When you're putting the bolts back on, make sure that you're putting them in the right holes and you're not using the holes which you need for the shell. You can tell by looking at the shell and seeing that there's 4 mounting holes to put the shell on. Once the plate is back on, we're going to go ahead and put the shell back on. You're going to want to make sure your shell is in the right orientation. That's with the number towards the back panel. And you're going to know if you got it right because the side holes are off center and they're not going to match unless you have it in the right orientation. Last step is to put the rails back on with the 2 bolts that are inside the rails.